Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Uh, this video is about the concept of this pointer. I'll just show you a very simple example that illustrates the use of this uh, this pointer. We have discussed that very briefly in the class, but this video would explain it in bit more detail, and of course we'll discuss that in the class as well. So you can see this file here, .cpp file. This is this underscore one .cpp. I'll start by creating a class called test, and I'll add some private and public members to that particular class. So let's add, and we'll call this class as test. So class test, it has got one private member, which is data member, which is int x, and then I'll add a public member here that uses this pointer, and this is a public member that has been added, a public function here. So this is set x. It takes it an argument x, and then it uses this pointer concept here and assigns the value of x to this x. I'll come to this point later on कि ये कर क्या रहा है, but let me just extend this further by adding a print function, okay, to this public domain, and here is a print function that prints the value of x. Then we'll just close the definition of this class, and then we'll move on to the main part of the program here that actually creates an object of this class test. So the main program here, we are creating an object of this class test, and let's just try to print the value of this, run the function print here. Okay, so let's just run this function print here, and you will see you can evaluate कि यहाँ पे क्या हो सकता है. So if you just run this, let's just see that what happens here. Let me just compile this, and you'll see that here the value of x is printed, and it has got a junk value. The reason for that is कि print जो है वो x को access कर रहा है, which is a private member, so you can't really access it directly. You have to access it through a function, and because you haven't really set any value of x here, तो इसलिए उसमें junk value आ रही है. So let's just use this set x function, and let's try to set the value of this of x through this set x function. So here I am adding this part here. तो ये line जो है ये value of x को set कर रही है. I can, let's say, initially put a value of I can add a value of 10, and let's see that what happens here. Okay, so let me just run this program. Let's see that what is the output, and you can see that the value of x is being printed in this particular case. So what's happening here? So if you look at this line here, this statement here, it actually calls the function x set, and this x set is doing what? This is primarily assigning the value of x to the data member of object, which is x, a value of 10. Acha, if you look at the structure of this function call here, you'll see that there is this object of obj, okay, and this function, this object is actually calling this function setx. So obj is primarily the invoking function, sorry, the invoking object here. So the value of x associated with obj can actually be accessed through this pointer, okay. So this pointer would always point to the x of the invoking object. The invoking object here is obj. So the value of x associated with obj will be assigned the argument. The argument here is 10 in this. So the value of 10 will be assigned to the value of x associated with obj. So obj is the invoking function here. So this pointer always refers to the invoking object. Okay, the invoking object is obj in this particular case. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay, so now let's just extend this discussion in somewhat. I mean, in some to another example, and probably that example would help you understand further about this point. Okay, so let me add another function here. और वो function क्या करेगा कि it takes in an object, और उस object की जो x value है, वो जो कोई argument के तौर पे आप उसे ले रहे हैं, उस x value को उस object की वो square करेगा और एक और object के अंदर उसको एक और object की x value के अंदर उसको store कर देगा. तो let me write down this function here. So this is this function. I'll just add it here. This part. So let me just take this bit here. Okay, so this is square it. So you can see कि इसकी output जो है वो एक test object है, और इसका जो argument है इस function का वो भी एक test object, right? So let me just write down a line here. Okay, and this is really important. Right. So here is a line that squares the value. तो यहाँ पे आप बहुत clearly देख सकते हैं कि r.x को वो square कर रहा है, ठीक है, and what is r? R is the input object or the argument that has been passed to this function, square it. तो आपको qualify करना पड़ेगा कि now आपने x की किस value को जो है वो आपने square करना है. तो r.x would tell you कि जो argument में r आपने pass किया r object, उसका x उठाओ और उसको square करो, right? और उसको store किधर करना? उसको store आपने करना है in the x of the invoking object, ठीक है. और invoking object क्या है? वो object जो square it को call कर, ठीक है. And this should be very clear in your mind, ठीक है. And then we'll just set the value of x and return this, the object that is being pointed by this pointer. Okay, right. So this actually completes our definition of this function. Okay, and let's just call this function. So I'll just comment this part and I'll just create two objects, initialize these two objects here. So test t1 t2, two objects have been initialized. और यहाँ पे set x को यूज करते हुए मैं उन दोनों ऑब्जेक्ट्स को की वैल्यू x वैल्यू को मैं सेट करता हूँ. दिस इज व्हाट I've done here. उनकी दोनों वैल्यूज को मैंने सेट कर दिया है. Now you can actually print these two values and see कि वो values क्या set हुई. Okay. Before we move on, let's just see कि अगर उनकी values को मैं print करता हूँ तो what values will be generated in this case. Okay, so you can very clearly see कि A की value मैंने 30 सेट किया t1 की और t2 की वैल्यू मैंने 10 सेट किया and I've just printed those two values through a function. So perfectly fine. लेकिन square it function जो है वो अभी मैंने यूज नहीं किया. So let's use this square it function. Okay. So this square it function, now I'll be using the square it function. Here I'm calling the square it function. So what is this square it function doing? The square it, if you compare it, the definition of the square it function with the call here, so which object is calling or the invoking object here? T1 is the invoking object here. So T1 is invoking this function, and what is the argument? T2 is the argument. Okay, so T2 is argument. So X associated with T2 will bind with R here. So R dot X would primarily be the X value associated with T2. और this X जो है वो किसके साथ associate होगा? The invoking function, and the invoking function is T1 here. So after this square it is actually run, होना क्या चाहिए? T1 की value जो है वो square होनी चाहिए of the value T2. Okay, so let's just print this as well after running this function. So T2 की value जो है वो मैं after running this function जो है वो मैं दोबारा print करता हूँ. ठीक है जी. So let me just run this program and see what is the output. Okay, so you can very clearly see here okay, the new value that has been printed, the last T1 is 100, which is the square of the value of T2. So T2 की value 10 थी जो आपने set की थी, right? So this function square it, T2 will take the value of T2, square it and store it in the value of T1. So this X would refer here, this X, or this pointer would always point to the invoking function or invoking object, and the invoking object in this case is T1. Okay. अच्छा एक चीज let me just change it a little bit, this program. So इस line को I'll just comment this line and I'll add this line here, and now I'll not be using R. ठीक है, अब मैंने क्या किया कि R dot X मैंने नहीं लिखा, सिर्फ X into X किया. So what do you expect? What should be the outcome in this particular case? I haven't really said कि ये X कौन सा. I haven't really added any qualifier with this X. ठीक है कि किस ऑब्जेक्ट को ये रिफर कर रहा है. R dot X के साथ तो ये this is perfectly fine. लेकिन अब देखते हैं कि अगर मैं अब इस प्रोग्राम को रन करता हूँ तो what is the expected output. ठीक है, so just keep your eye on the last value that comes here. Okay, so let me just compile this. And here you go. You can see that यहाँ पे value आपके पास 900 आ गई. And what is 900? 900 is actually the square of 30 जो कि मैंने T1 के लिए सेट किया था. अब यहाँ पे T2 की वैल्यू तो स्क्वायर नहीं हो रही. The reason for that is okay, whenever you will state within this program within this function जब भी आप x लिखेंगे या this points to x लिखेंगे, this would always refer to the invoking function, sorry, the invoking object, बार बार function कह रहा हूँ, invoking object. The invoking object is t1 here, क्योंकि आपने t1 dot square it किया, तो खाली x लिखेंगे या this points to x लिखेंगे, that would always refer to the invoking object. और अगर आप ये चाहते हैं कि इन्वोकिंग ऑब्जेक्ट को वो पॉइंट ना करे, फिर आपको क्वालिफाई करना पड़ेगा कि आप वो किस ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट करे. तो द सेकंड लाइन हियर व्हिच सेज r डॉट x इज क्लियरली पॉइंटिंग आउट कि अब आपने उस x को लेना है जो कि r के साथ एसोसिएटेड है. एंड व्हाट इज r? r इज द आर्गुमेंट टू स्क्वायर इट. द आर्गुमेंट टू स्क्वायर इट इज t2, देयरफॉर t2 के x को ये रेफर करेगा. राइट? Is this clear? So if अगर आप ये पहली लाइन रन करते हैं, this would square the value of t1, क्योंकि यहाँ पे आपने simple x लिखा हुआ है. In order to square the value x value of t2, आपको qualify करना पड़ेगा कि ये t2 को आप refer कर रहे हैं. That means कि argument को qualify करना पड़ेगा, तो r dot x आपको यहाँ पे definitely लिखना पड़ेगा. तो in the first case ये होगा कि वो इन्वोकिंग ऑब्जेक्ट की x वैल्यू उठाएगा और उसको स्क्वायर कर देगा इन द फर्स्ट लाइन. और सेकंड लाइन में वो क्या कर रहा है? सेकंड लाइन में वो आर्गुमेंट का x उठाएगा और उसको स्क्वायर करेगा. और आर्गुमेंट आपने t2 को पास किया है. पहली लाइन का आर्गुमेंट के साथ कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है, दूसरी लाइन का आर्गुमेंट के साथ ताल्लुक है. तो लेट मी जस्ट रन दिस अगेन. इफ आई कमेंट दिस आउट, रन दिस प्रोग्राम, t2 का x उठना चाहिए और उसका स्क्वायर होना चाहिए, which is fine. And if I comment this line now and uncomment the first line, यहाँ पे वो t1 को रेफर करेगा. राइट? सो लेट्स जस्ट सी कि अगर मैं आर्गुमेंट चेंज कर देता हूँ, तो लेट्स सी कि अगर मैं इस फंक्शन कॉल के आर्गुमेंट को चेंज कर देता हूँ, यहाँ पे मैं t2 कर देता हूँ और इसको मैं t1 कर देता हूँ. Now what will the first line do? X into x. ये किस t को रेफर करेगा? किस t को ये x अब रेफर करेगा? This x should now refer to t2. ठीक है? और t2 की वैल्यू को वो उठाएगा और उसको स्क्वायर कर देगा. तो let's just run this. Let me just set a different value for t2. Let me just set it equal to 15. So what should be the outcome? If I run the first line, let me just compile this and you will see कि क्या होना चाहिए इस केस में. 30. Okay, I'm not printing here, I'm just printing t1 here. I'll have to print t2 here. So let's just print t2 here and see okay, what happens. Okay, here you go. ठीक है? Right? And what if I comment this out and make this one? तो अब मेरे पास t2 के अंदर, t2 की x वैल्यू के अंदर कौन सी वैल्यू होनी चाहिए? Let's just run this. 900. So now you can see the difference here कि this pointer जो है that always points to the invoking object. ठीक है? और if I don't qualify it, for example r dot x अगर मैं नहीं लिखता या object dot x में अगर qualify नहीं करता, तो simple x as in this line will refer to the invoking object. और जब मैं r dot x लिखूंगा, this would refer to the x of the argument. ठीक है? So this should be very clear in your mind. I hope you will you will practice this concept, and you will actually try to understand कि ये कैसे होता है. So this was about this pointer. So in the coming videos, I'll talk about type def and the operator overload. Thank you very much.